So why don't we just turn our attention to measurement, which is a topic that all of our clients ask us about all the time. Just to start with traditional methods, what do we think about traditional methods of measuring learning and behavioural change?
So they're great for what they do, right? So when we're looking at traditional measures of behaviour change, you're looking at things like focus groups and pulse surveys that get distributed over time. They have a place, but they're expensive, time-consuming to be able to deliver. And so your evaluation methods get pretty expensive pretty quickly. And they also take a lot of time and attention from the people involved. And so what we've always tried to do is to build in our measurement capability and evaluation capability into the experience itself, so you can get a real-time measure and feedback based on how you're doing.
I mean, for all the hundreds of change projects I've ever done, we've always had the ambition to do some proper measurement, and generally found it too hard, or the client wasn't willing to pay, or it just became too difficult to specify what types of outcomes. So you mentioned we do it differently. Tell us about how that works.
Yeah. So when we create experiences, digital experiences for people, they're delivered through the platform, and the platform creates a chat-like experience for the people picking up their module. And so when they open Cognition, it looks and feels like they're chatting to somebody, but it's a scripted conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can answer open-ended questions to help them reflect. They can perform a range of different little mental operations which are driven by the prompts that we create.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the prompts can either give them things to do or think about, but they can also collect data at the same time.
Right.
And so when we ask somebody, to what extent do you think you're growing in confidence based on the exercise that you've done, that's a valid reflection question, right? Mm-hmm. It makes people turn inwardly and go, I wonder, I'm thinking back on the experience that I've had, and I'm connecting the dots between my level of confidence and the experience I had, and I'm thinking about its application in the real world. So there's a lot of inward looking that goes on.
Mm-hmm. And you can make that a quantitative measure
exactly,
as well.
Yeah.
And then you can then ask them to explain what they've done to make it qualitative as well. So we start to gather text-based data which we can analyze later.
And the difference between that and a traditional kind of survey is that you know what it's like being surveyed just by everything you've done in the real world, right? Yeah. So you fly on an airline and they send you the survey afterwards and they say, please, it'll only take 5 minutes of your time, which is never true. And then you go through the survey and it's you feel like you give, and you're not really getting anything back. It's not for yourself. And so when we do, a lot of our measurement is based around inward looking and your own personal benefit and reflection, but we gather data in the process. So we call them stealth surveys or micro surveys.
Yeah. So in my last job in Aramco, I thought we did a fantastic job of measuring learning using all the usual things, and also we used a Net Promoter Score. Yeah. And so every one of our programs had an NPS around the facilitator and the content. But you always got great scores. But you never really measured did people do anything differently. Right. And so what I'm excited about when I first saw Cognition and now today, we're actually measuring, did people do the thing we wanted them to do that specifically represents the change that we're trying to drive. So tell us a little bit about that and how that's changing the way we do change work.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me talk about how we capture the data. Let you talk about the indices, because that's largely your brainchild, and you've driven us to improve our reporting that way. So let's say we give somebody a task to perform in the real world, and that task might happen in the environment of their computer, right? We might say to them, go and log your time in Workday, pay attention to the following few things while you're doing it. And so they go away and do that, and they come back. And the very first thing we ask them to is whether they did it or not. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's an example where somebody is it's an honesty situation, but there could be something more visible in the real world, like have a conversation with a colleague about their performance, and then or something even more visible, set up a meeting with colleagues in which you discuss a new aspect of the strategy and how your team's going to execute on it. And when you self-report that you completed that, there's a lot of visibility amongst your colleagues about whether you really did or didn't. And generally, whether it's individual tasks or whether it's group tasks, we tend to get very high correlation between actions executed in the world, private or public, and what we call activation checks. So when we ask somebody, did you complete the task, we call that an activation check. Did they take the action that you wanted them to do? And then you start thinking about indices for those.
Yeah.